So if you guys saw my 5 o'clock video on Monday, let me just go ahead and bring you guys up to speed.
Question. Jake and Anna, please tell us who the left is that you keep referring to and never defining. I'd really like to know as a self-ascribed leftist. No problem, because that we do that sometimes on the show. You don't know what we're referring to. Do we mean the whole left wing? Absolutely not. Okay, the majority of the left wing is perfectly reasonable on this.
Are they?
While it is true that you are seeing B-roll footage from the previous video that I did, of course, talking about the situation in Aurora, Colorado with the Venezuelan gangs overtaking the apartment complex, and of course these people being armed. And of course I've been talking about this for the past week and a half about how it is that you now have them showing up in Chicago. This video is not really and truly about that, but still though, I wanted to bring it up because obviously we got to talk about the media bias, and exactly why it is that one said left-wing personality appears to have finally had it. Now guys, really quick. This right here is going to be part 1 of 2 or part 2 of 3. I know I said in the previous video that it's almost like an arc because we've been doing a lot of videos where Ana Kasparian has, I wouldn't say gotten it right, but of course she's kind of shed the far left dishonesty label to ask what the hell is really and truly going on, whether it be the migrant crisis, whether it be the situation involving, well, I just put it this way here. Crime is definitely something that will swing a lot of people from left to right, at least on a certain issue at a certain point in time. But once again, here we are talking about this, and this time it is Ana Kasparian going off on Msnbc.
What's equivalency going on in the coverage of this race? Their objectivity actually is not objective at all. It ends up playing to Donald Trump's advantage every day.
In an effort to appear balanced, to appear objective, mistakes are absolutely being made and standards are being applied to both candidates here when Donald Trump is a different animal. He is an insurrectionist.
Well, the crew over at Morning Joe on MSNBC, the same crew that wanted Biden to continue running in this presidential race, despite the fact that he was suffering from clear cognitive decline. Yeah, those people, they're furious that journalists would have the audacity of ever reporting anything negative on the Democratic nominee, Kamala Harris. Because
okay, now you guys obviously saw a little bit there. And of course, before we respond to that, make sure you guys please go ahead and cut the notifications on for the channel so that way you guys are notified when these videos are released. Please go ahead and hit the like button, and let's go ahead and get started. So every election cycle, you obviously have the media, you have the left, which of course, they have MSNBC. Of course, you've also got left-wing streamers out there. And of course, you've also got CNN. Now, really quick, I would be completely and totally unfair if I did not mention Fox News, if I did not mention Newsmax. And guess what? I'm going to mention Fox News and Newsmax too. Now, I want to say this really quick. This is a bit of a preview for the second video because we're going to come back to this right in the second video, of course, and we're talking about the bias, of course. Fox News was created in the 90s, for the most part, by Roger Ailes. The reason why was because Roger Ailes felt that the media was a little bit too much to the left. At that time, for the most part, the mainstream media was NBC, ABC, CBS, and of course, you also had CNN. This was back in the 80s and the 90s. And of course, they had a little bit more of a left-wing bias. Well, it had a left-wing bias then. It always has had one. It also includes headline news as well. So the thing is this right here. Roger Ailes looked at that and said, you know what, conservatives have got talk radio, but I think conservatives need another voice. So Fox News was eventually created. Now, what does that have to do with this right here? Well, it has to do is the fact that somebody who spent her entire career going after Fox News and right-wing media now finally realizes that left-wing media is just as bad, if not way worse, than what she claims to hate or dislike. But really quick, I'm not here to kiss TYT's rear. I don't like TYT. I never really actually have. I think Jink is an absolute clown and a pig himself. And of course, he doesn't know how to tell the truth. But every now and again, a little morsel will come out from time to time. And yes, I know of Ana Kasparian's recent things that she's gotten wrong, her past transgressions, and of course her discontent, and of course all the dishonesty that's came out of her over the years. But I got to admit, Ana has gotten better here recently. I've had to do a few videos actually praising her. And this right here is, of course, one of those cases. Now, not everything she says in this bit I think is accurate, but as you guys could obviously see with that bit from MSDNC, Ana's starting to wake up and realize that the left-wing media is, in fact, very, very much in the tank for Kamala Harris. Newsflash, they've always been in the tank for the Democratic Party because the Democratic Party is not really a candidate anymore. It's more or less a machine. I may do a video on how that right there came to pass. I'll probably wait till after the election because everything's current events at this moment in time. But still, though, obviously Ana Kasparian appears to be waking up and seeing what's going on. I mean, she's not lying. This is the same party that was willing to let a decrepit old Joe Biden remain the president or remain the nominee, knowing he had no chance of winning, even though that's the thinking on their part, when I have argued that actually Joe Biden was the only person that could win because nobody's going to vote for Kamala Harris. And, of course, the polling now that's recently came out, one of which is the New York Times poll, has kind of indicated that the race is, in fact, shifting back towards Trump. Before we really go deep into this, I want you to know something right now. Ana actually, whether she knows or not, in this response. And of course, it's two parts because this is only half the response in this video here. I'll link the full clip in the description box. But of course, the second part will come out later on in the afternoon on Tuesday. Whether she knows it or not, she actually hit the real divide in the country because, of course, Jink and Ana and everybody on the left will not talk about the real divide in the country between the left and the right, which, of course, is really just urban versus rural or big city versus small town. But we'll get to that here in a second. But let's keep this going.
Anything negative on the Democratic nominee, Kamala Harris, because Trump he's a special threat. And so since they've decided that Trump is a very special threat, well, then journalists should hide information about Kamala Harris from you. So you don't vote for Trump and definitely vote for Kamala Harris. In other words, they want the media to manipulate you and do the exact opposite of journalism. Don't believe me? Well, why don't we hear co-host Mike Barnicle make his...
I'll get to the bias here in a second, but let's go through this first. Now, real quick, before we get to Barnicle, I want to go ahead and say this real quick. There is a such thing called blue anon accounts that exist out there. The blue anon accounts actually believe that the assassination attempt on former President Trump was staged. And they post such crazy stuff like what you guys are seeing here with these tweets. They believe the whole thing was staged. And of course, even Msnbc kind of played into this. Now, I don't think I need to play the advantages or, excuse me, not the instances. Don't worry, I'll link everything in the description box because they've had one host say that Trump showing up at the RNC with a bandage on his ear was Trump saying it's all about the spectacle when obviously he would need to have a bandage on his ear because he just got shot. I mean, guys, I've still got the bandage on my neck from the surgery. It's been there since like 2 Fridays ago, since since August the 30th. Since the doctor sutured it up, it's still there. It's supposed to remain there. Common sense just goes out the window with these people. It's mostly emotions, and of course MSNBC has played heavily into it. But even though the FBI has said that obviously the shooting did in fact take place and that the former president was in fact hit, you've still got accounts out there, and of course you've still got to go out of your way to prove to these people that Trump's got a scar on his ear, stuff like that there too, because the media has driven these people so insane. But let's get to Barnicle.
But there's a false equivalency going on in the coverage of this race, in that Donald Trump can say whatever crazy things he wants to say about submarines and sharks and electric batteries, whatever he wants to say. And it's not really covered in the sense that it's covered describing who said it, why he said it, and who the man is, Trump, out of his mind. And always in that story, in the equivalency, the false equivalency by too many reporters and too many American newspapers, there's also, by the way, Kamala Harris changed her mind on fracking. They always throw in something like that in the coverage of the story. It's ridiculous. We don't cover the man for how dangerous he is.
That's literally all you guys do. Okay, now, before I play the next segment, I want you guys to know something right quick. This is also a bit of a preview about something else that I mentioned earlier. Ana, whether she knows it or not, she kind of hit the actual divide in the country. Whether she wants to admit to it or not, she kind of hit it. Remember, Ana Kasparian, Jink, they live in LA. Remember, most of the Democratic Party itself, as far as Democratic Party voters, live inside big cities. I'm talking about cities like, say, New York, cities like, say, Philadelphia, cities like, say, Boston, LA. LA, not so much, well, yeah, but not so much for what I'm about to say. But cities like, say, San Francisco, cities that are a little bit more accessible as far as for walking is concerned. People love to take public transportation. They take cabs or typically have somebody else driving the vehicle, subway, train, stuff like that. They're not people who are going to be using gas and fuel like, say, someone like myself is. But, of course, that's also a big part of the divide in the country, which we'll talk about after this next segment because, Yeah, Kamala Harris flip-flopping on an issue like, say, fracking is extremely important, especially given the fact that MSNBC never really and truly wants to actually have a conversation on why that's actually important. But once again, though, orange man bad, that's who these people are. But let me play this little segment for you, and I'll expand further because Anna does kind of hit it.
You don't cover the man for how dangerous he is. I don't know. I don't know what country I'm living in, but I feel like we get wall-to-wall coverage about Trump being a danger to this country. It is incessant. It is all they talk about on MSNBC. Did he just suggest that journalists shouldn't report on Kamala Harris changing her mind on fracking? Is that not an important policy that voters should be informed about? And also, is he under the impression that telling Americans the truth about where Kamala Harris stands on the issues automatically means that Donald Trump is going to win the election? I just see, this is when I started my career, when I started working at TYT back in 2007. And now we're in this awful era of conditioning audiences and readers to expect journalists to cheerlead like partisan hacks for one candidate or the other. And if you don't do it, if you don't engage in it, they get mad at you. You're supposed to be my.
What she said there in the last 30 seconds, I think, is the most important. You see, when somebody starts to reflect on the other news networks and when they started out, they're starting to realize that they were sold a bill of goods. Let me say something to you right quick. We need good journalists in this country. Anna's not one of them, but I'm just glad to see she's finally waking up. MSNBC does not have good journalists. A journalist's job is to actually get the answers, to find things out that the people might need to know. That right there is what a journalist is supposed to do. MSNBC is not a network that has journalists anymore. It's mostly just commentators pushing an agenda. Fox News has the exact same thing too, but for the most part, from about 5 o'clock in the morning until about 7 o'clock at night, Fox News is in fact reporting the news. Yes, they do bring in some people to commentate on it, but of course they still, for the most part, stick to the story. It's not till 8 o'clock when you get to Jesse Waters, Sean Hannity, and Laura Ingraham that it suddenly turns into more commentary. But even then, they're still bringing up the news, and they're still bringing it up and using the left's words or MSDNC's words when they actually decide to do something. MSDNC is not a network that is about, how do I say, anything other than commentary nowadays. They don't report the story. They don't talk about the issue. Like, for example, the issue of fracking. Now, I don't want to turn this video into an episode about fracking, but whether Anna knows it or not, she hit on the actual divide. You see, I talked about this where I touched on it briefly. People who vote Democrat, for the most part, live inside big urban areas like New York City, Boston, LA, San Francisco. Of course, this also includes Seattle. It also includes Portland, Oregon. It also includes cities like, say, Charlotte, North Carolina. Blue cities within red states. However, the thing about those areas is that these people typically tend to rely on public transportation more often than not. They don't take cars. They're also living a little bit more off the taxpayer, meaning that the taxpayer is also providing additional services for them, of which we'll talk about in future videos. But public transportation obviously is a big thing in these areas. I'm not trying to hit you for it or anything. I understand public transportation is probably cheaper than a vehicle. Have you seen the parking in some of these big cities? Like, for example, if you live in New York and you have a car, you have your own car, guess what? If you stay inside one of the nice apartments or even one of the crappy apartments, you got to pay thousands of dollars a month to actually pay for parking in that place. Just simply saying that I understand their pain. But still, though, at the same time, though, people who live in these very, very large cities are probably not going to care as much about the same issues of someone like myself who lives in much, much smaller town America, which is the true divide in this nation. Of course, you do have some people who live in these cities who are, in fact, smug about the issue and could quite frankly care less about the farmer who provides the food for them. I can already hear somebody who's very, very much on the left saying that blue states pay more in taxes. That's true. However, those red states that don't pay as much in taxes also house the military bases that you would need for security, and we also provide the vast majority of the food for you, so don't give me that crap because at the end of the day, it oftentimes evens out. The fact of the matter is you got one side of the aisle that's really and truly pissed off with the other, and the side that's actually the one that's been pissing the other side off is the most smug side, and they live in the very, very large cities and quite frankly could care less about the average everyday struggle of the man or the woman who's providing the service for them, whether they know it or not. That right there being protection or whatever the hell they may be providing, especially food. People don't seem to realize exactly how easy it is to cut these people off, especially if you live in New York and you have to cross the bridge to get over. If the food supply was cut or if the bridges were gone, not advocating at all, I'm just simply saying that you would be in an absolute mess. I mean, you got people out there who think that milk comes from the store and not from the actual cow itself. Last I checked, there isn't really any farmland in New York City, so good luck if you piss off the people who live in rural areas. That right there is part of the reason why it is people would want to hear about her fracking policy. People in Pennsylvania who may not want to vote for Donald Trump, and obviously I wish that they would. See how it is that I'm a Trump voter. I could see why it is they might still vote Democrat, thinking that it would probably be the status quo, that fracking would not be touched or anything. That right there is what I'm trying to say. It's very, very important that a person actually answers questions when it comes to policy, of which Kamala Harris has not really answered any questions at all. The one interview she did, she had Tim Walz with her. It was a softball interview with Dana Bash, and it got panned by absolutely everybody. Hence the reason why it is the recent New York Times Siena poll came out showing Trump up, and when you look at the crosstabs, it's absolutely brutal for Harris. Did you think maybe simping for the same candidate over and over again might cause an effect like this, or it could cause something else that Anna smartly picks up on, but let's get to that.
But again, we see it time and time again. For some reason, the mainstream media, what are we, 9 years in to Donald Trump's era in American politics, still doesn't know how to cover Donald Trump. Their objectivity actually is not objective at all. It ends up playing to Donald Trump's advantage.
Don't be objective because it plays to Donald Trump's advantage. Why? Because journalists want to answer a question about how Kamala Harris would handle Afghanistan, what her views on Afghanistan happen to be. Do the American voters have the right to know where Kamala Harris stands on those issues? Or should we be kept in the dark because Trump bad? Trump bad, maybe, just maybe. The media had been fear-mongering about Trump so much, so often, that Americans have become desensitized to it. Has he considered that? Has he considered the fact that Joe Biden ran his campaign almost entirely on Donald Trump is a threat to democracy and it wasn't working? Why do you think it wasn't working? This is the most brain dead argument I have heard on MSNBC, and that is saying something, because there are a lot of brain dead arguments made on MSNBC. But we're about to hear more. So Joe Scarborough argues that journalists who are trying to be objective actually end up helping Trump. So maybe don't be objective.
There was a lot there. Okay, whether it be the fact that you get attacked for going against the narrative, I don't think I need to go into that. The fact that Anna, of course, picked up on the fact that people are being desensitized because most people just look at MSNBC now and they just bust out laughing. I mean, she's talking at the very, very end about Joe Scarborough saying that being objective helps Trump out. That's right. Being objective, the only thing that does is hurt the Democrat. We need objective journalists. I'm sorry. Maybe if some odd chance that maybe journalists or people who worked at MSNBC did decide to be objective and unbiased for a change, it would also hold the Democratic Party accountable. And maybe people would not be having the issues that they're having today with trust. But of course, we all know that MSNBC is in the tank for the Democrat the same way that Fox News is in the tank for the Republican. But at least Fox News will cover the story. However, I need to say this though. Anna's actually correct. People are being desensitized to it. You see, the Trump derangement syndrome is not something that these people can run on nowadays. So now they're trying other dirty little tricks. That's what these people are doing. And as a result of this, people just look at Joy Reid now, of course, with that blonde, stupid wig that she was wearing at one point in time. Now everybody knows that she was an affirmative action hire. People look at Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski now and think, oh my God, this is comedy. I'm not going to lie to you. I'll cut MSNBC on from time to time just so that way I can laugh at these idiots. That's what they are. It's pure comedy nowadays. People have gotten desensitized to it, and people can now see that they're not a serious news organization. Now, that right there could be the real reason why it is that Anna, of course, is going through this, because an institution that she quite frankly respected at one time and even debuted on has turned into an absolute joke. But let's let her finish.
Trump bad. That's what Joe Scarborough wants. He wants journalists to line up and say in unison over and over again, Trump bad. Because that's been real effective, right? Listen, he wants to be a cheerleader for one side. That's great. Go be a cheerleader for one side. But don't sit there on your boring ass morning show where you tried to gaslight the American public about Biden's mental health and pass judgment on people who are trying to get Kamala Harris to answer questions on something amazing, policy, where she stands on policy. Because there are voters out there, believe it or not, who aren't partisan hacks. Those are the individuals who actually end up deciding elections, and they want to know where Kamala Harris stands on policy.
Yes, Anna, because Trump bad. Trump bad. Look, I know I can't do a good impersonation, but still though, yes, Anna, that's the thing. By the way, you and Jake also at one point in time used to play the whole Trump bad. Okay, I'm just saying, you two used to do the same exact thing. I mean, go back and look at the 2016 election video that Don May Pesos posted about these two on election night. It was absolutely hilarious. But I am glad to see that Anna is finally somewhat getting it. Now, I said I'm going to let her finish, but I said that stupidly, not wanting to edit that clip part out. There's actually a little bit more to go, which I'll play for you guys now, and we'll go ahead and kind of finish this up.
Simply hearing Trump bad over and over again doesn't work for them. I think the American people deserve to know where both candidates stand on policies. Don't insult the intelligence of voters. And more importantly, please don't pressure journalists to suck at their jobs by being nothing more than partisan hacks like Joe Scarborough is, like Mika Brzezinski is. It is unbelievable to me. So look, turns out advice already, as left-wing misinformation, unfortunately, is now part of our media landscape. And it's not something that I'm happy about, because a lot of these sources I used to trust, I used to believe their reporting at face value. And then I came to the realization that they weren't telling the whole truth. They were admitting parts of the story. They were, in some cases, taking Trump out of context. And it was infuriating, because if you put Trump in context and you actually report the story accurately, I'm not going to suddenly be a...
But here's the thing. Policy is never going to get discussed. It just isn't. Because like you said, I mean, Trump bad. That right there is who these people are. That right there is what they're designed to do. They're designed to gin up their own audience on an emotional level, not to think about policy. And of course, it's really kind of sad, because when you actually wake up and see what the hell is going on, you find out that these people are going out of their way to make your lives a lot worse, to make you rely upon them. But as like I said before, MSNBC for the most part is just pure comedy. That is what the hell these people are. The sooner you understand that that's what they are, the easier it is for you to, how do I say, ignore their BS. Now, the thing you got to understand is this right here about Anna. Anna has been on the side that, of course, has been the pushing propaganda side. That is what the hell TYT did for so long. Now, maybe Ana Kasparian was a true believer. Maybe she really truly believed in what the hell was going on. Or maybe it's what Spoon, the aristocratic utensil, said a long time ago. She's not really and truly a leftist. She's just working a job, but of course she's left-leaning. And of course, as a result of that, she's kind of sort of been entertained or been taught by the zealot, that right there being Cenk Uygur, and she's starting to figure out the crap that she's been taught, of course, is false. Maybe that right there is what the hell is going on. I mean, when she got attacked by a homeless guy outside of her apartment, that right there should have told her right away that yeah, maybe progressive law enforcement, maybe progressive crime fighting doesn't exactly work. I think what's happening is that Ana Kasparian is waking up to all the lies that the media is shoveling out there. And I think she's starting to develop a heart for those who live outside of the area she's living in. Of course, that right there could also be false, because she may come back a week from now and say something the complete opposite. But I do got to give her kudos for calling out the mainstream media on their BS, especially MSNBC. Now, I know that we're at the very end of the video, and I did tell you guys that I was going to split this up into two parts. The fact of the matter is this right here. This one right here was my initial reaction and response to exactly how it is that Ana Kasparian has gone after MSNBC. However, in the next video, she's going to do a little bit more lamenting than you might would think. But of course, this conversation of policy will in fact come back up. You see, the policy discussion is an extremely important discussion, because the policy discussion affects people's lives. And at this moment in time, with so many people with the TDS wearing off, no COVID or anything, it seems to me like the mainstream media does not have the power that it normally would have. Unlike in 2020, when everybody was kind of in a frizzy and we were kind of locked down in our homes. this election right here is going to tell you a lot about the nation itself. And I'm glad to see that Ana Kasparian has finally started to see that maybe the mainstream media, maybe the corporate media, they're the real true enemy of the country. But you guys tell me what you think in the comments. With that right there being said, make sure you guys please hit the like button, subscribe, share the video, sound off in the comment section. We'd love to hear what you guys have got to say. I'll see you guys later.